Namaskar. Today is the 26th of May, Wednesday 2021, and welcome to Daily Global Insights with Sree and Sree. This is episode number 171. We have a lot to cover today and shall jump straight to US news. Sridharji, before I do that, welcome to PGurus channel. As always, it's a pleasure to have your thoughts, sir.
Good morning. Welcome to all of you for the yet another morning broadcast or telecast. Thank you, sir, and look forward to another exciting day.
Yes, and in US news, sir, Florida becomes the 23rd state to end $300 unemployment benefit boost to improve business hiring. So now this is becoming more and more of a pattern. Let's hope that this brings normalcy to the economy. Your thoughts, sir?
I think the Republican states, would lead the effort. 23rd state is a reflection of the growing momentum and swing towards this specific model. And as you rightly point out, the economies have opened up. The numbers tell the story: low unemployment rates and people getting back to work.
And GOP leaders accuse Biden and the Fed of pursuing woke agenda as inflation looms. We've been saying this again and again. Inflation is a real danger now. So now the GOP leaders are perhaps taking the high ground. Your thoughts?
Well, they're just basically making the statement. The first time they've used the word woke agenda. Now, if you listen to Fed very carefully, Jerome Powell, he said that he's looking at the labor card, which is unemployment rates coming down at the deeper sections, and then the same sentiment is echoed by the Treasury. So what they're saying is that it should come as a GOP is saying is it should come as a natural outcome. It's not something that you pursue as an adventure, as an activist type of an agenda, and assume that the economics will work. So they've defined for the first time that the Fed is pursuing with Biden the woke agenda, and that only can be a disaster.
And House GOP leaders call on House Democratic leaders to commence investigation into the CCP virus. Are they coming on their own will, or are they coming in kicking and screaming, sir?
They're coming kicking and screaming. There is now a growing chorus that as more and more evidence gets either leaked out or observed, and as people see the virus spreading all around the world, there's a growing fear that the investigation reports have not been conclusive and the evidence has not been presented for debate and the appropriate action.
And it gets better. COVID-19 origin descent suppressed by intelligence community, House GOP report finds. And this is a very significant moment. You know, the NIA said this thing, I guess, sometime back. I am not 100% sure about the date and timing. And there were also, I think we covered this in DGI, where we said that those who were expressing doubts, their voices were suppressed, isn't it, sir?
Those who found that there's enough to go after and do investigation, plus collaboration between the PLA and the Wuhan lab, including the scientists who were caught in United States, who appear to have been collaborating and were on a retainership fee. The exact nature of the research is not known. Perhaps the research was not disruptive, but nevertheless, they were part of the research program. And all these evidences came out, almost from October, November, December last year. But somehow the members of certain segments of the intelligence community suppressed it. Now that's coming out loud and clear.
And Anne Wagner says that WHO should not be the entity investigating China on COVID. Now, this is an interesting development. Rev Wenstrup says Biden's reluctance on China is not fair to mankind. So now the pressure is like drip by drip, beginning to build up on Biden, saying, look, what are you shielding here? Why are you shielding here? That's how I see it. Your thoughts?
Exactly the same. The reason we have covered so extensively in the US, there's a chorus that is growing from House GOP to House Democrats. Then the House GOP Republican committee asking the report to be released. Then senators and House representatives by turn coming out and making a statement that why is Biden silent, especially when the virus is pervasive. That is why we have, and on top of that, we have already covered yesterday, Fauci and Gottlieb making a statement, well, this may not have originated as an organic, virus, but it seems to be from something not normal.
Well, Fauci is playing defense. He's saying that there was a modest collaboration with Wuhan scientists, especially in studying bat viruses. And he says that the capital was not allocated to gain any functional advantage. How can you make that statement? Once you give the money to them, how do you know it was you, where it was used?
Well, I think it's very interesting that such a statement has been made. Now, today, when Fauci comes up and says, "Yes, we were involved. Our Department of Virology and pandemic studies was collaborating, but of course, we didn't allocate capital, for the sake of gaining any advantage, but we're involved." That is very striking today in concert with sequence of events that was unfolding yesterday, and then of course the day before yesterday, these two people making statements around it, and for him to state this, just they say there's no smoke without fire.
Terrell says that Biden and left played race card and lied about George Floyd death. BLM and Antifa have used it to advocate anti-cop agenda. So Terrell's statement is pretty strong. How much of facts and realism is based on, is this based on, sir?
Simon Terrell is a civil rights lawyer, and he has been very vocal about it. The fact on the first anniversary, again, they're trying to make a big, death is, you have to condone any type of activity that results in the death of a person. You basically mourn for it, and you are compassionate towards the people and the family because we respect loss of life. But to just politically and opportunistically seize and try to derive advantage is not something that's acceptable. So Simon is basically saying they are just taking this into a spin and using it for their political purposes. Same thing with Antifa and BLM. They've been using this as a vehicle. There has been certain incidents, and including shooting around the George Floyd Square last night. All this points to some kind of political disruption, which is not warranted, when you are trying to get behind this.
And let's move on to Indian news. Indo American Dialogue continues with Dr. Jaishankar in the US capital. India attracts the highest foreign direct investment of 82 billion in fiscal year 21. The second one is now China, which means India has essentially pushed China out as the favorite destination for the United States. That's very significant.
It is a very significant. Once upon a time, China used to get close to $100 billion of per year, annual $100 billion of FDI. For almost a decade, they got this capital, which helped them to push their economy and create this behemoth reserve of about 2.5 to 3 trillion. So when you take India now slowly inching its way towards that 75 plus billion, some of us who have socializing and evangelizing, or if you ever use the word, advocating the growth of Indian economy to be a $5 or a $10 trillion or a $30 trillion economy, which is the desired goal, then we said that India must have an FDI investment coming in, and that should be in the range of about 75 billion on a consistent basis to about 10 to 12 years. So India will then have the infrastructure capital for it to produce a GDP multiplier. So we have definitely breached the 75 billion mark. India needs to sustain it for a period of time to achieve the economic advantage. And we saw that again also in the Indian capital markets reaching the 3 trillion mark, which is equal to the GDP of India today.
Indian government plans stimulus for sectors affected by COVID-19 second wave. I think the details are still awaited. Whatever little that you can share with us, please feel free, because MSM in India is not going to cover this.
But the sectors that they're focusing on are tourism, which has been badly affected. They're also focusing on hospitality, which has been badly affected because of the shutdowns. They're focusing on the MSME segment of the industry, which is a small business. That's been badly affected. They're also focusing on the healthcare services sector, which requires capital because the whole healthcare services is being retooled. So I think the loans that are being granted. I don't know the number. The number seems to be something like 50,000 crores is being set aside, where the banks will lend against that at very concessional rates, so these healthcare services can come up. So they've identified these are the initial sectors on the horizon. Probably more will come up, but it's a good deal, very similar to the infrastructure plan that we are attempting here in the United States as a stimulus to give a boost to the economy.
And UK, that is United Kingdom, gets the ball rolling for free trade agreement with India. So this is the much famous trip that Boris Johnson or Bojo was supposed to make, and it has not materialized. But I think now they are doing everything via video. Plus, is MEA going to be stopping over in London on his way back?
No, I think he was. I don't think he is. He was in London, and he has achieved the goal. I'm sure that the objectives are met. So now Bojo and Modo will meet by virtual summit, and they will meet in person very soon, and get the agenda going. I think they are experimenting with already some agricultural exports going from one of the states. So this 12-week consultation is to identify the areas and then determine what's the right approach to go. Obviously, defense is one of the areas, manufacturing is one of the areas, alternate energy could be one of the areas. So clearly, Britain needs an anchor player in a large market, which better than India for them.
And India and Israel sign a 3-year work program to train farmers and modernize agriculture. Israel, we know, has been able to wrought miracles because they inherited desert, and they've been able to not only produce enough water for themselves, but now they are a water surplus nation. And this is, I think, also a very good step in the right direction, sir.
Yes, I think irrigation is something that they have done very well, and India has experimented in a number of areas. Then, of course, the desalination is another area, and of course, the other thing is the purification because of the lot of fungus as well as the plants, which make the oceans and rivers. Sorry, make the rivers and lakes non-potable as well as unfit for irrigation purposes. There's been a lot of effort around the purification or cleansing of the lakes and rivers. So this particular program is called as they're establishing centers of excellence around 12 states. They have identified 29 locations where they will establish the centers of excellence, working very closely with villagers and teaching them the appropriate methods by which the irrigation system and the agricultural farming can be improved for better productivity.
And India and Oman signed two key defense pacts on maritime security and military cooperation. India is really busy this week, sir.
India has been busy this week, and I think we are also advocating that, for quite deliberate reasons, that there has been a lot of adverse press in India around the whole concept of India doesn't have partners and partnerships, and India must look outwards, etc. What they may be implying is, surrender India to China and surrender India to Pakistan. That may be the agenda of some of these publications. But on the contrary, India has built enormous partnerships with a number of people around the region and a number of people very much outside the region. Oman is very significant. It's a long-standing partner, and it's a partner with whom India has had strategic relationship for a period of time. This defense is very important because it gives them the passage and gateway into both the Indian Ocean as well as into the African continent. When you say there is a maritime as well as there is a defense is from a deterrence point of view. So any of the naval ships that pass through that region, they can dock and maintain maintenance and other kinds of activities. And then, of course, from a trade point of view, that they also can be a logistical support point as they move into East and South Africa.
And government is going to directly procure from Pfizer and Moderna. Panacea Biotech and RDIF launch production of Sputnik 5. So these are significant developments. There is no surprise that the companies like Pfizer and Moderna don't want to deal with state governments, sir, because they don't have a very good track record of working with global corporations, isn't it?
Moderna and Pfizer, they have followed a consistent pattern for two reasons. One is around the insurance indemnity that they are pursuing. That's number one. Number two, they want to have a single point of accountability for procurement. They don't want to have the issue of managing logistics, distribution, and dealing with multiple parties in a given country. So they go to a government, they do a central procurement, and the whole point-to-point accountability rests with one person. Then it becomes that country's responsibility to manage the logistics of distribution and all of the kinds of issues. So I think it's a very good move. My suggestion to a number of viewers is, if you roll back and play 3-4 sessions or 1 week of sessions of DGI, you can probably itemize close to at least 20 to 30 different initiatives which India is embarking on in managing this COVID on a long-term basis, but both from a procurement point of view as well as from distribution and managing the needs of 1.35 or 1.39 billion people.
Nasal vaccines could be the game changer in India, but it is unlikely before 2022. Again, we touched upon this in our previous episodes, haven't we?
It is. Today, the WHO for the first time has come out and issued a statement that, this very famous Dr. Swaminathan's daughter, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, she has issued a statement saying this nasal vaccines, nasal swabs could be the game changer. And, that initial rests are very positive, and it's conceivable that it won't happen in 2021. It's possibly 2022.
And Netanyahu, in front of Blinken, tells US should stay away from the Iran nuclear deal. Blinken, US commitment for security of Israel. So there is some interesting play going on. He's in Israel. He's talking about Israel and Palestinian. But Netanyahu didn't feel too bad about dragging Iran in here.
He feels that there is on the cusp of, up until, day before yesterday, Iran was playing hardball, and it was indicating that, it will cut off the satellite image access to the IEEA, so no inspections could take place. And so Netanyahu has inherent suspicions. 2-3 days ago in the Iran-Syria border, they had another terrorist or leader of importance was taken down by the IDF, who was considered as a huge security threat to Israel and engaged in types of activities. So you're finding here the Benjamin Netanyahu and some of his cabinet ministers taking a bold position. Just because you bargained and you pushed us for ceasefire, don't take it for granted. We exercise the right. So to that extent, Blinken is saying, your security is important to us, but in the meanwhile, we are doing the other stuff. And we also want to bring Iran to the table.
Iran and IAEA extend monitoring deal, averting crisis in nuclear talks. Looks like everything is hunky-dory again, sir.
Well, I think Iran and Palestine and some of these countries around that, which are, fulcrum points, now know how to play the game, and they're playing the game. And it's very well known that Biden and Blinken want to have an alternate strategy. I don't know about Blinken, but certainly Biden, whether he's been egged on, I don't know. They have reneged on the West Asia peace deal, or Abrahamic Accord, as they call it. They've reneged on it, and they basically say there's nothing great, and they're redoing this, which is effectively, Obama policy. Doing this nuclear deal with Iran and constantly, persuading, egging them, and to bringing on is nothing but to justify that the Obama transaction was a great transaction, notwithstanding the fact Iran has flouted every rule and every norm. And violating the norms, China and Iran struck a deal, overcoming the issue around trade sanctions. So if somebody thinks in Obama's world that Iran is going to be normalized, then he is sadly mistaken. And of course, progressives within the Democratic Party are also providing impetus to some of these activities.
White House says Biden and Putin will be holding their first summit on the 16th of June in Geneva. I think we also mentioned this a few days ago. So this is now going to take shape, isn't it?
It's a form. It's a date is announced. The location is
Six.
announced.
Yes, yes.
June 16th and Geneva, not in Brussels or London or other place, not in Russia, but it's taking place in Geneva. And then Biden has issued a press statement, which is to say we have to meet, we have to talk, and we have to work the process. So therefore, we can't be, we can be isolating ourselves and taking adventurous approaches. And we need to sit and talk to Mr. Vladimir so that there is at least in that part of the world and rest of the world that we have not a hostile partner, but somebody with whom we can work with. I think that's the objective of the Putin Biden agenda.
EU leaders agree to donate 100 million doses of vaccines, and China expands influence in Africa by building facilities, and Western nations counter the move. So we see now this vaccine diplomacy being picked up by other countries also, such as the EU, and China is trying to do something. And we also see that Taiwan continues to suffer from the trifecta of drought, power outages, and COVID virus. I'm putting all these things in perspective, sir. Just give us a bird's view on where you think these things will lead to. EU's thing, where are they directing their vaccines? Is it going to come to India, some other countries? How are they doing it? And what is China up to? And Taiwan, of course, is now in a hard spot.
I think first and foremost, we must dispel this theory that India needs vaccines. India doing a deal with Pfizer, with Moderna, with Johnson and Johnson, with Eli Lilly, plus expansion of its own AstraZeneca COVID program, plus the Bharat Biotech expansion, plus this new work with DRDO. I think India is going to have plenty of vaccines coming out in the next 3 to 4 months. Already there is enough vaccine supply, which I didn't mention as a news item. There's enough vaccines available, I am told, until the next tranche of vaccines kind of coming. It's a mishandling in some of the states that's creating the problem. So if I take a look at to answer your specific question, 100 million is going towards many Asian and African countries which are very badly in need. The penetration levels of the vaccination that is taking place in those countries is less than 2%, 3%, including Japan is very adversely impacted by lack of access to vaccines. The Africa is concerned is more a geopolitical play. We have touched on this, but it is being reaffirmed that the infrastructure is being expanded by China, to seize control. Now, I have not included, but there's some three to four generals from the African countries who have been formally trained in the PLA academies, in the warfare. These are the people who are expected to say rah, rah, rah to China should any of the issues come up. So clearly, China sees Africa as a strategic vantage point, and it clearly is expanding the footprint. To final point on Taiwan, just like India, Taiwan seems to have the same issues that India is going through. Cyber attacks on the infrastructure, plus sudden spurt in the expansion of COVID vaccines. If you recall, we had mentioned that there was some pirate boats which came into at least 20, 30 pirate boats which came in and docked, and they were given entry as those who are escaping the commie oppression in China. Now, today we heard, yesterday we heard Mr. Money talk about how the advocacy and the propagation of this potential, biowarfare can occur in terms of transmission of this disease. So now suddenly you look at Taiwan, which was at 0%, having spurt in the COVID cases. It seems too coincidental, but the cyber attacks and the spurt in vaccines, in concert with all the stuff that's going on in Taiwan, is a cause for concern for the world community.
And Burma's Aung San Suu makes her first court appearance since the coup. And I think we will move on to markets, sir, with your permission. Markets drop on sluggish consumer confidence data on inflation, despite the Fed position, which has been one of a dove, isn't it?
Well, I think Fed position is that interest rates are high, but interest rates are, inflation is high, but we can take care of the inflation as the economy begins to settle down. Whether that holds true or not, one we don't know. Time will tell. But clearly, holding the interest rates at the current level is causing concern for a number of people. To the credit of the Fed and the Treasury, the 10-year rates did drop below 1.6% today, notwithstanding the fact that there is a fear in the markets.
And with that, we bring our daily global insights to an end. Be back tomorrow, bright and early. Thanks for joining. Do join our membership program. Do subscribe to our channel. And Sridharji will be back again tomorrow, bright and early, sir. Thank you and namaskar.
Thank you. Namaskar.